Blueprint number 7, financial strategies. Some of our early arguments in marriage about money include things like who controls the checkbook, do we have to have a budget, and what if we do have a budget and she violates it or he violates it? Should we have separate checking accounts or a joint checking account or separate cards? His money, her money, is it hers if she's working? And I'm just going to not answer any of those questions. I'm going to tell you that when it comes to money, there is not a one-size-fits-all solution. You kind of have to work it out. You kind of have to decide. Most of us, when we're first married, operate more on pride than we do on common sense. I'm the worst example I use for money problems in early marriage. My wife, I knew, was a much better bookkeeper than I was, but I was determined to be the head of the household and ensure her that I could balance the checkbook and manage it. And so a couple of years later, we were head over our heels in debt. And then I wanted to just put it in her lap and say, figure it out and get us out of this mess. But I knew that was unfair. So we buckled down and I organized absolutely everything we owed, figured out every interest to the penny, and worked it out on a big chart and hung it in my office at my house. And then we spent the next many months working our way out of debt and trying to get out of credit card debt. And at some point after we started seeing daylight, I realized that she would be a better manager of bookkeeping than I was. And so we let her keep the books, but I didn't just try to dump it in her lap and say, where's my money, when I wanted to go buy something. I tried to, we tried to do it collectively and work things out, with reason, and then after a while she was buying more things than I was buying. We got out of that. And that didn't work. And so we just, over the early years, we just struggled trying to find a happy medium. And pretty much by the time we'd been together 20 years, we just worked it out where pretty much everything we both make together is hers. And I try to pay the bills electronically and just let her do whatever she wants to do. So that's the sum total of my financial advice for you. I don't even know how much money she makes until it's tax time at the end of the year. And then I see a form from her school, and she really didn't make money last year because I never saw any of it. But she's happy that way, and I'm happy that way. So there you go. So what are we going to talk about if we're not going to solve those problems? Well, we're going to talk about the things we can. We can suggest a simple goal for everybody, no matter how you figure out your checking and card situation and income situation, depending on whether you're newly married young or been married 30 years or in a second marriage. You have to just come to agreements on how you're going to settle your personal expenditures and who's going to keep books and how you're going to do it. But aside from all of that, you do have to have agreement to work together for common goals when it comes to your money in your home. And everybody, I know this sounds really simple, but everybody needs to learn how to live within their means. We made the early mistake of many young married couples. We wanted the same things our parents had without realizing they'd been living together for 40 years. They'd been working forever. They made money. We were entry-level salary, and we wanted a house full of new furniture and new cars and new homes, and it just wasn't practical. And so after we finally went into debt in a few years, then we started learning how, no matter how we settled the checkbook issue and the credit card issue, we learned how to live within our means. Learned how to only spend what we had to spend, and learned how to invest together in a few things. Good generic advice for everybody is just increase your income and decrease your expenses. The best advice anybody can get from anybody is number 2, get out of credit debt. No matter how long it takes you, make that one of your mutual goals, get out of credit debt. in my opinion, and it's not worth a lot, but in my opinion, about the only two things any of us ought to be in debt for is a house and maybe a car. And that's, you know, car's up to you. I've got a couple of friends who overload on the cars, and at any given time, their combined two-car note is going to be somewhere between $1,500 and $2,100 a month to pay for two cars because they got to have spanking new ones. I haven't had a car note since about 1988. I know you don't like what I drive either, but I haven't had a car note. Nana, nana, nana. So you, with your $900 a month car note, can suck on that for a while. Get out of debt. Get out of credit debt. Buy a house and pay notes on it. If you have to buy a car on notes, buy it and pay for it. And everything else should not be on credit. Don't live on department store credit cards. Don't live on MasterCards and Visas. Don't buy into the 0% interest for 6 months and then go buy a bunch of stuff you can't pay off in 6 months. Because then you're going to start paying 14, 18, 21%, whatever they finally stick to. It's a trap. You never quite get out of it. So get out of debt. And there's a simple strategy for doing that. Organize all the bills you owe. Pay off the smallest bills first. And then don't celebrate after you pay a few things off. Make you a chart, find your smallest, start paying them off, line them out. You get a few lined out, don't go celebrate and spend $500 because you paid a few debts off. Do it until the chart is clean and you can finally say, we don't owe anybody a credit card, Visa, MasterCard, are only used for emergencies. And I know we'll say, but I couldn't make it without you. You can if you get out of that debt. And then you don't just go buying stuff. The money you're spending on bills every month, if you were putting that money aside, then you would have $200 to go buy this, or $800 to go buy that, or $5,000 to go buy whatever you need. You would have it if you weren't spending it just to pay for the thing you're buying on credit. Problem two, you already know this, you buy it on credit, by the time it's worn out, you're still paying for it, and then you got to go buy another one on credit, and it'll cost more than the last one did, and so on and so forth. No matter how small, number three, no matter how small an amount, everybody needs to learn how to set aside some money every pay period. Doesn't matter if it's $5, $50, $100, you need to set something aside, and if you're not going to do it for long range, at least do it for emergency fund. Isn't it amazing? Some of you have been married a long time can look back and remember that there were so many things you can't calculate. You can calculate my car payment, my house note, and our credit card, and our clothing account, and cleaners, and you can calculate a few of those things, and then your car breaks down. And you weren't expecting it, and it's not under warranty. Most cars are kind of designed to last until the warranty's up, anyway. And then they're supposed to fall apart. They don't design them to last forever. They design them to only last long enough to get them past the warranty, and you pay for the rest of it. But man, if you're not ready for a transmission going out for $3,500, guess what you're going to do? It's going back on a credit card. And then you're still paying for a transmission in a car you don't even like anymore, and you still got a car note on it. So just set aside money for an emergency fund, because you're going to have them. You're going to have them forever. And by the time you have kids, everything is an emergency fund. School was an emergency fund. And so you just need to put aside something every pay period. And the only reason I say that is because savings is a pure and simple habit. And people say, we just don't have enough to save. You're not in the habit of saving. If you get in the habit of putting something aside every pay period, then once you get in the habit, it becomes easier to increase it from $10 to $20, or $20 to $100, or $100 to $150. Once you're in the habit of doing it. So put something aside, save something. And number four, ignore what other people buy. Do not go online and try to buy you a U8 watch from China just because your friends have Apple watches and you're just trying to keep up with the clones. And if you're curious, by the way, the U8 watch was only like $68. Guaranteed forever. Number 5, and also you need to get in the habit of supporting the work of God, and that is laying aside a portion according to how you prosper. That's the best scripture in the New Testament that mandates to us how we support those who are hurting and struggling, and our church continues to help, and how we maintain our giving to God is to lay aside a portion according to how you have prospered. That's what Paul wrote to the Corinthians. And on that note, on a personal biblical note, every Sunday, Paul said on the first day of the week, 1 Corinthians 16:2, every one of you should lay aside as God has prospered him. It's not defined, by the way. I've been asked, does that mean tithing, 10%? Well, 10% is the only model we got from the Old Testament law. And then we find Christ saying, well, you should have done that to a man who said, I've given a tithe of everything. But he didn't necessarily say, and that's my plan for the ages. So when you turn to Corinthians, it's pretty hard to just find a tithing plan. In the New Testament, it was the Old Testament plan. Actually, in the Old Testament, there were 3 tithing plans, so that'd be 30%, I guess. But in the New Testament, it's certainly clear that as God has prospered him, probably indicates in proportion to. So, you know, if somebody makes $500 and they can give 40 or 50, that's pretty good. That's as God has prospered them. Somebody else makes $5,000 and they give 40 or 50, they're not really giving as God has prospered him, in ratio to how God has prospered you. So that's just something everybody has to decide on their own. But I'm telling you, if you don't do that, you're going to find out the hard way that there really are scriptural mandates about giving that are reciprocal. The only time Paul ever referred to one of the churches in his travels as being inferior is in 2 Corinthians, the 12th chapter and the 13th verse. And he told the Corinthians, he apologized to them and told them that he had made them inferior to other churches in that he had not asked them to give. And because they were not asked to give by Paul and support him and the other ministries that other churches were supporting, Paul wrote to them and said, I made you inferior in this area. Many years ago, we rented our church to another church that was trying to start up, and they were having trouble finding a place in town because everybody wanted money. And so they contacted us, and knowing that they were trying to start an alternative church, they still said, is there any way we could rent your church? And I said, well, there might be. What do you have in mind? And so the pastor to me said something along the lines of, we were just wanting to take a little offering every Sunday afternoon, and we'll leave the offering for your church. And I said, well, that's fair. You know, we'll see where you go with this. And I talked to him about theology and doctrine a little bit. We had an hour's meeting, and I said, bring your crew in and see what y'all can do. After a couple of months, he was leaving like $10 in an envelope in the foyer or under my desk, under my office door. And it cost, you may not be aware of this, it costs a lot of money to turn one air conditioning unit on. You know, when we're running about 30 tons of air here at church, or 40 tons of air. Our bill runs anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a month just to keep the air conditioning cold enough in the auditorium for me. And it's clearly not working in here up to my standards. Jim, you might want to check on this level in here. We needed to get at least to 65. And but if we just let somebody come down and use the building and we kick on 20 tons of air for them to come in, that's probably a $200 surge just to turn it on. And so after a couple months, I said, man, you're leaving like $10. Well, he said, I just don't want to ask my people for anything. And I said, why? He said, we're just a small, struggling group of people. We only got about 35 people coming. I said, you got 35 people coming, and the best y'all can leave in a church you're using and borrowing air conditioning and facilities is $10 a month. And then he tried to talk to me like I was greedy, and I said, I'm not greedy. I'm embarrassed for you. That's a shame. Do you have idiots coming to your church? You got stupid people coming? I mean, seriously. People know what it costs to operate and maintain a building and business. My church knows because we pay the bill every month. And if we didn't have enough money, we'd ask them for more. And they would give because they know this isn't free. It costs. It costs money to turn it on and run the lights and buy everything we have and use everything in here costs money. You know, the whole property up here is valued at about $1 million, and that's no small change. It comes from somebody's pocket. And he got offended because I said to him, you need to teach your folks to give something. Everybody in your church can give something, $1 or $100. But you need to teach them to give something. And when they give, then you leave a portion of what they give because you're renting. You're not going to find another building in Tomball you can rent. And he didn't want to do that. And so another month or so, I called him and he got huffy and said, okay, we'll just leave. I said, okay. So they left. And it didn't matter to me if somebody thought I was greedy when that happened. I'm telling you that the only way you ruin people is by saying, hey, I know you don't have any money. What? You got iPhones running out your kazoo. You got toys like you don't buy. You got laptops cost you $1,500 and iPhones cost you $200 a month just so you can talk on an iPhone. And you don't have any money for the work of God or to help the people that we help around this church every week. We probably help at least 2-3 folks every week. Financially, I'm talking about financially. We spend several $100s on a typical average week helping folks that we know justifiably need the help. And the only reason we can do that is because you're not like the Corinthian church. You give. We've been on this hill for 15 years. We have never had to beg and ask you for a dime. And it's because you understand the necessity of giving. But here's the cool thing about that. If you give without begrudging, God loves a cheerful giver. We do not begrudge that we're giving something to God. Got to pay MasterCard. I don't have anything for God. That really the way we want to go to eternity with God is like, hey, thanks for my job and everything you gave me, but I had to have all my toys. I just didn't have anything to give. If I could prove that church gave money to poor people, I might have given a little bit more. Well, come to me. I'll prove it to you. We'll show it to you if you need to see names and faces. We won't tell them publicly, but you need to, just so you can give an extra $20. Now, you understand that? This is inferior church Paul's talking about. But here's the reason that preachers or anybody who's been around the loop, here's the reason anybody would tell you that you really need to develop a habit of giving up, giving to God, giving it up. You can't give it to God, but you can give it up. If you give it to me, that's not giving it to God, but it is. You're giving it up. Remember the old joke about preachers? I take everything they give me and throw it up. Tell God, you keep what you want, send back the rest to me, and I keep it all. That's not true. None of that's true. But the actual truth is, how do you give it to God? How do you give it to God? Well, you don't. God doesn't need anything. If we hold our praise, he said these rocks and stones will cry out. And if we hold our money back, he'll find somebody to do it. You've heard me say before, this church, we were starting to be borderline several years back. We were struggling. We had a couple of crises. A few things broke in church. We had to have a little extra money to buy and repair some things. And we were struggling a little bit. In fact, I think I had Allison come in and make an announcement, just hoping that it would stir somebody, memory to put a little bit extra in. And not a lot was coming in. And there was one cantankerous guy along about that same time questioning, why are we spending that much money on this and blah, blah, blah. And so I just said, hey, there's no mandate here. You don't give. You don't have to give. We don't beg, and you don't have to give. This is voluntary giving. And so he went away kind of irritated because I didn't satisfy him. And then a guy who just comes when he thinks about it now and then, actually never come to a Sunday service. But he walked in one day with a paper sack and walked in the office over there and pitched a paper sack, just a lunch sack, up on the desk, wrinkled and dirty. And he said, "Preacher, I just thought you might be able to use this." And I said, "Okay." And I peeked very carefully because he's loony. And then I peeked in it, and it's just a stack of money, bills. And I said, well, yeah, probably, but what's the deal? He said, I just needed to give some. Feel like God just laid it on my heart and just needed to give it. And I said, well, man, you couldn't have given it a better time. Let me count it for you and give you a receipt. You don't have to count it for me. I know exactly how much is in there. $10,000. And I said, well, no, I better count it for you. I'm not going to give you a receipt for $10,000 without double checking. That could be $7,000. I didn't tell him that. I'm not worried about it. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. And so I decided I better double check it. I don't care. Sure enough, he dropped $10,000 on the desk. Bailed us out, bought what we had to buy, repaired what we had to repair. I don't know about you, but I've just never been able to not give and to still feel good about myself in my connection to God. But here's what I've discovered over the years. Luke 6:38 is that classic verse that says, if you give, it will be given back to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, shall men give into your bosom. Doesn't even say God will give it to you. It says if you give, good measure, pressed down, shaken. That means they're getting that wheat down, and they're going to get every ounce of weight that they can get in that sack, and you're not going to get sparse back. You're going to get well back. And I am telling you, if you knew how much little money I make, you'd probably be embarrassed for me. But I can tell you, I haven't wanted for anything. I got all the gadgets and toys I want. I got no debt. And I haven't wanted for anything in a long, long time. My father had nothing, but he gave religiously to our church, and I watched it transform my father. When our church wanted to put a parking lot in, and a gravel parking lot in, we parked on grass when I was growing up, and they wanted to put in some crushed rock parking lot, and they were asking everybody, please, it's going to be a major expense, give what you can. We didn't have any money. My dad went down to a loan store, borrowed $100 to pay back on notes. That was a chunk to him in 1962 or 3. And he borrowed $100. We could have bought a lot of stuff in our house with $100 in those days. When bread was like 25 cents, 15 cents. And my dad borrowed that money and put it in that church. And it's amazing how just every time my family needed something, a better job offer would come along, a better opportunity for mom came along. My mom was a good seamstress, and she was just kind of making dresses for people in church and friends. And then she got an offer. My mom made dresses for Neiman Marcus. My mom was hired by a company called Howard Wolf, and they put her in the Neiman Marcus line. And there were 6 women in there making gorgeous dresses for Neiman Marcus. People buying those dresses like crazy. My mother learned all the skills and the tricks of the trade, making those fabulous clothes for Neiman Marcus. And then she could start making dresses for people that could pay for it. Man, people would drive up at our house to buy a dress, or have my mother measure them, and they would come in like they didn't want to touch anything in our poor little hovel, and yet they were coming to a woman who was a master. And all those things happened, I believe, because my father lived by this principle of just giving. And number 5, 1 Corinthians 10:24 tells us to never seek our own, but always seek someone else's will. We really miss the mark a lot when it comes to money in the Bible. We really do. It's one of those topics preachers like me are scared to deal with, so we don't teach you anything about it. We just skirt around it and run on. I live by it. I try to live by its principles. I would rather you be wealthy than me. I give up what little I get. My pastor was a master at it. They used to joke about it. Don't give him $500. If you give him $500, he'll give $510 before he leaves church on Sunday. I have pretty much done the same thing. I have given away on a number of Sundays more than I'm going to make from this church in that same week. And I wouldn't if it was going to cost my family or my wife to go hungry. I do it because I can do it, and I do it because I know I'm going to get it back somehow or another in the long run. by God, and I'd rather somebody else do well when they're struggling worse than I'm struggling than me. Let no man seek his own wealth, but let every man seek another's wealth. How do you measure up to that verse? And these are things we don't talk about, but I'm just telling you. I don't care which one of you manage your checkbook in your family, but if you're not following some biblical principles, it won't matter who's doing your checkbook anyway. You'll fuss and fight over $25 and $50 and $75 and golf clubs and watches and shoes. And you'll never come to an understanding of why you're struggling all the time if you don't get some biblical principles down. The Bible simply says that the love of money, not money, the love of it, loving it, hanging on to it, hoarding it, needing it more than I need anything else, not going to let go of a penny, not going to let somebody else have it because they might not spend it like I would. Well, of course they won't. That's the whole idea. If any provides not for his own, and especially for those of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. Just going to let that verse soak in for a little bit. I am commanded to provide. I can't sit back and let somebody else do it. I'm commanded to provide. Do whatever it takes. Work whatever you have to do. Work. Many years ago, we were in the other building, and we were struggling. I was struggling. Church was, not doing well, and a lot of division in the old days, 20 years ago. I had daughters in high school that needed things and cars. I didn't pout about it and say, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to quit. I had a church offer me a job. I had a church lure me. They actually lied to me and said the pastor was sick. Would I come preach for him? And so I got somebody to fill in for me here, and I went to preach for another church because the pastor was sick. And then a week later they called and said, the pastor's still sick. Could you come back one more time? Any way in the world. I got somebody to fill in. I went back over, bailed him out. Aged pastor, he's infirm. I went over and preached for him. They had about 35 or 45 kids in one youth choir, 30 in another youth choir. They had about 20 acres, all of it was paid off. And then I go back over the second time, and they said, hey, you got to stay after church, we got to talk to you. Stay after church, and a bunch of men pulled me back to the back room. Okay, we misled you a little bit. Our pastor is fixing to retire, and he did not want anyone to know because he knew there'd be a line of people wanting to come get this church. And he wanted to see if you were interested. And we've had you come twice. Our church members have privately behind your back agreed. We're offering you the job of pastor. We want you to come. Said, oh, y'all blindsided. No, we want to go ahead. Just give us a minute. So they went through. They would furnish me a house to live in. This was many years ago. They would pay me $125,000 salary a year. They would give me a paid vacation 2 weeks every year, and they just laid it all out. And I'm telling you, I'm sitting there making $20,000 a year, 25 maybe on a good year. And I'm looking at their paperwork, and I'm like, hey, whoa. I do everything by prayer. I cannot give you an answer. I got to go back and pray. I go back home. I tell my wife, we get down, we pray about it, we cry about it, we get through praying about it. Not even a question. I come up saying, nope, I'm in the will of God. This is where I belong. So I called the church, and the guys just won't let go. He just said, oh, man, what else can we do to sweeten the pot? And I said, well, if y'all would have thrown the Mercedes in, I would have thought. I'm joking. I kid you not. About 3 days later, Park Place Mercedes in Houston, Texas, called me on the phone. Reverend Carpenter, we are waiting for you to tell us the color of the Mercedes that you'd like. We already have Mercedes selected for you. You tell us the color. They called Park Place Mercedes to offer me. I did not go. I wanted to, and I wanted to justify it because I had to provide for my own. You know what I did instead? I went down to a warehouse off Jones Road in 1960, and I got a Sunday morning job cleaning the warehouse. And every Sunday morning, I left my house about 3 o'clock, and I got down there and cleaned the warehouse out, stomped the dumpsters down, cardboard boxes, took them apart, cleaned up from the workers. Got back to my house about 6:30, showered, put on a suit, came to church and preached to you, and never told you a word about it because it wasn't your business, but it was what I chose to do because I had to provide for my family one way or the other. I just didn't want to step outside the will of God. I didn't tell you that so you'd feel sorry for me. I told you that so you'd feel proud of me. I did the right thing. I did the right thing. I stayed in the right place. I followed the will of God. I didn't pursue my wealth. I didn't pursue money. I didn't love money more than I did the will of God. And I still provided for my family the best way that I could. And I'm blessed for it today. I'm blessed with my daughters and my sons-in-laws and my grandkids. I am a blessed man. And I don't say because I've earned it, I did some things right. I'm just telling you, these are the principles. You either live by principles or you don't. And these are the principles that the Bible lays down for us. They're tough. In summary, earn enough money to provide for your family one way or the other. Save enough money for short-term crises. Eliminate as many of your debts as you can. Give to the work of God and provide to the best of your ability for your future. If you do those things, that's the best financial advice you're going to get from me, because I don't know much more than that. The other things, you're going to have to work them out on your own. This concludes blueprint number 7, financial.